Hey guys, my name is Mitsumiya, and welcome to another episode of Monday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you'd like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question for the day is, what do you think about the recent discussion that the one-shot headshot mechanic should be changed in Rainbow Six Siege? So I gotta admit that I find it pretty amusing that people are even having this debate right now. I find the discussion interesting, and we'll get to those reasons why here in a second, but if we're being completely honest with ourselves, this is never gonna happen, and I think it's for two reasons. The first one is that we're over 3 years into the life cycle of Rainbow Six Siege. If the game just came out like a month after and people were having this discussion, then yeah, sure, I could see Ubisoft maybe considering it. But the fact that we are over 3 years in now, I just don't see that happening. And then really the biggest reason is that this has become kind of the unique identity of this game. People got involved with Rainbow Six Siege to begin with because of the one-shot headshot mechanic. It really differentiates itself from a lot of the other competitive games out there. On top of that, this is a learned skill. People have had to learn how to play Rainbow Six Siege around this mechanic, and to completely remove it or change it in a significant way would require literally everyone to relearn the game, which I don't think many people would be on board with. Now, all that being said, though, I can see where people are coming from, and it does bring up some interesting points. One of them is that this would remove a lot of the randomness and luck that happens in Siege. You guys experience this every single time that you load up the game. Someone gets a lucky hipfire against you across the map, like a blitz, for example. Someone sprays through a wall, and you just happen to be on the other end, and you get one-shotted. Those moments are, of course, incredibly frustrating. Or someone just gets a lucky spray against you, where normally in any other competitive game, they wouldn't have had such a large advantage. You strafed into a headshot, they weren't controlling the recoil, but it kind of luckily bounced right into your head. Those moments happen every single time you play the game, and this would actually require people to be a bit more consistent or accurate for a longer period of time, instead of just getting a lucky flick onto your head. That would remove those moments almost not entirely, but remove them in a significant way. This could also make weapon balance a lot more interesting. Because Ubisoft is currently constrained around this mechanic, if you eliminate it, or at least expand upon it, it could make some weapons a lot more viable, like DMRs, for example. You could introduce new weapons that normally wouldn't really work in the old system, and now they would flourish. You can make slower rate of fire weapons a bit more consistent. That would be possible with this new kind of system. That said, though, even if they did decide to do all of this, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be better than the one-shot headshot mechanic that we have right now. It would come with its own host of problems. The first big one is that they would have to completely redesign the weapon balance and the dynamic between offense and defense. Because the one-shot headshot mechanic is in place right now, that actually gives defense, and not necessarily an upper hand, but at least a chance to win against the powerhouse that is the offensive team. Almost all of the weapons for the offensive team hit harder, have a longer effective range, and just do better overall. The thing that equalizes them is that one-shot headshot mechanic. And so as soon as you eliminate that, I feel like the win percentage of defense would drop significantly compared to the offensive side of things. We then have to consider what would happen to shield operators. Their, of course, biggest counter is the one-shot headshot mechanic, and so while maybe now that their secondary weapons aren't as good as they were before, because of course they're affected by this as well, how do you deal with them? If you're now going against a blitz who can take one extra round to the face, is that going to make him a bit more unstoppable? It's hard to tell unless we actually implement it in the game, but I would be worried that this would be something that could be very frustrating. And so I definitely see where people are coming from. I even think this entire discussion was brought up because of pro players, the best of the best. Pengu in particular, I think, was championing this idea. I don't necessarily think that it would make the game better because it has its own host of problems. Yes, it would make things different, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be better in the long run. And so all in all, I think it really just comes down to the fact that the game has been out for more than 3 years now. The entire game revolves around this one-shot headshot mechanic. It really makes Rainbow Six Siege unique. People would have to completely change the way and relearn how to play the game, and Ubisoft would have to entirely redesign and balance the game essentially from the ground up. And so while it's an interesting thought discussion, I'll give you that, I don't see this happening for Rainbow Six Siege anytime in the future or at all for those very reasons, but of course that is just my 2 cents. The next question comes from Joe, and it is, what do you think about offense dropping their unused second drone when they get taken out when defense has Mozzie? Just like how defenders drop phones when there is a Dokkaebi. So what I find really interesting about this is, first of all, when Mozzie came out, people were convinced that he was going to be overpowered. He was going to make every other information gatherer, maybe not necessarily obsolete, but he was definitely going to be at the top. Being able to take over another player's drone, which of course eliminates that from them, it takes that away, but also they can use that however they wanted, sounds incredibly powerful. But now as time has progressed and people have learned to work around him, he's really not that difficult to kind of counter as long as you're observant of your surroundings. It seems like he's kind of fallen by the wayside. I'm seeing a lot more people using Valkyrie because she's just a lot more consistent. Because you're not guaranteed a drone every single round, you have 3 cameras every single time that you spawn in as Valkyrie. Valkyrie just seems like the preferred choice. And while don't get me wrong, I still think that Mozzie is good. I think that he has some great weapons. His gadget can be very useful. I just think it's interesting that, at least from my experience, people have been moving away from him in favor of others, and I just think in general, people don't find him to be as strong as their initial impressions kind of indicated. Now, with that out of the way, though, I do think that this is an interesting concept. I don't think it would probably make him all that much better than he is right now, but it would give him more options. The reason why I say this is that if you do take someone out, as you said in the question, it only drops their second drone, but if they already had their second drone somewhere else on the map, of course it can't drop to the ground. On top of that, it's also going to depend on how far away they are and where they're located. If they're all by the entire enemy team and it's not in a safe location where you can run on up and use your gadget to, of course, take over the drone, well, then that doesn't matter that it dropped to the ground because you're not going to be able to get access to it anyways. Just like with Dokkaebi, you're not always able to hack the cams of a down player because they're just not in a prime spot. That would be the same thing for Mozzie, but at least it would give him some extra options. All in all, though, I do think that this is an interesting idea. I don't necessarily think that Mozzie is in a terrible place right now, but I could definitely see why some players would like to see him get a bit of an improvement, and this would be one way that Ubisoft could go about it. The next question comes from Dylan, and it is, why is there not a system in Firestorm where we can use our weapon skins? I'm not exactly sure. It seems like Criterion understood that people wanted to be able to use their cosmetic items because at the beginning of a round, you can change the look of your character, or at least the presets that you had before you got into a match. And so if you wanted your character to look a specific way with certain camos or different skins and outfits, that's a possibility. But when you actually pick up weapons around the map, they don't actually have the camos that you have on those weapons, which I think is a missed opportunity. But let's be completely honest, a lot of Battlefield 5 is a missed opportunity. Now, it saddens me to say this because I really do think that Firestorm is one of the better Battle Royale games out there right now, at least for me. I enjoy Apex Legends, but this really is its own unique experience. The pacing, for example, I think is one of the best. From start to finish, there always seems to be action. Like, of course, there are some lull times where you're just running around trying to find people, but especially by the end, there'll still be like 15 people alive in the circle and things are just popping off all over the place. It's incredible. I've had some of the most amazing moments in this game mode because of the pacing. The circle is phenomenal. I think the actual Firestorm itself solves a lot of the gameplay problems that a lot of other Battle Royale games suffer from. Like, just in general, there's a lot of great things about this mode, but at the same time, it also feels a little undercooked, which I guess is kind of the story of Battlefield 5 in general. And so, yeah, I agree. I would love to have camos. I would love there just to be a kind of more of a progression, at least cosmetic wise, for the game in general overall, but especially for this mode. And so I am 100% on board. Yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Monday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you like the idea of making some improvements to Mozzie? What are your thoughts on changing the one-shot headshot mechanic? I'd be kind of surprised if a lot of you want to see changes there, but let me know down below. As always, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.